What if I told you that the man who sometimes confuses you with his mixed signals is actually more in love than even he realizes? You've caught him looking at you when he thinks you're not noticing. You've heard that slight, almost imperceptible change in his voice when he speaks only to you. The unconscious doesn't lie. While his words might be cautious, his soul has already made its choice, and it's you. The brilliant psychologist Carl Jung discovered that our most profound emotions often bypass our conscious mind entirely, revealing themselves through subtle behaviors we can't control. When a man's soul recognizes yours, his body betrays what his lips haven't yet confessed. Most women mistake silence for indifference, when in reality, it could be the exact opposite. The most authentic form of love doesn't announce itself with grand gestures. It quietly transforms his entire world in ways neither of you fully recognize until now. That man, the one who perhaps confuses you with his silences, his distant attitude, or his sudden, intense closeness, might be far more in love with you than he himself can imagine. Love doesn't always enter through the front door of logic or clear words. Sometimes it filters in through the cracks, through dreams, through the way he looks at you when your back is turned, through how his entire demeanor shifts with you, and only with you. Jung famously said that what is not made conscious manifests in our lives as destiny. This applies powerfully to love. If he hasn't yet become aware of what he truly feels, his soul is already acting on his behalf. So, how can you know for sure? What signals does his unconscious send out, betraying the secrets of his heart even when he won't say a word? This isn't going to be a superficial analysis. I'm not here to talk about text message response times or romantic cliches. We're going to delve deep into what Jung called the symbols of the soul, into how a man expresses himself when something inside him vibrates every time you are near, even if he can't quite put his finger on why. Before we continue, I want you to pay close attention to each sign, because the biggest mistake we often make is waiting for loud declarations, bold promises, or spectacular gestures. In doing so, we let the most valuable proof slip by unnoticed. The way someone's inner world quietly transforms when you become a part of it. Jung taught that true love isn't chosen, it isn't programmed. It appears like an inevitable force that disarms our barriers and connects us to the very essence of our being. So, open your intuition, heighten your sensitivity, and just observe. If that man you're thinking of does even one of these things, if you have seen him react in any of these ways, it's because he is deeply moved by you, and probably much more in love than his rational mind is ready to admit. I'm going to show you these signs, one by one, from the most subtle to the most revealing. This isn't just about figuring out if he likes you. It's about learning to see how a soul responds to the presence of real, transformative love. When a man is profoundly touched by a feminine presence that changes him, even if he doesn't know how to explain it, his behavior begins to shift in ways that even he cannot control. The first major sign is in how his attention is modified. And I don't mean obvious attention, the kind that seeks to impress you or demands attention in return. This is something far more subtle, more authentic. He begins to be aware of details about you that would go completely unnoticed by others. He somehow knows how you're really feeling, even when you smile and say, "I'm fine." He picks up on the fact that you changed your hairstyle, even though you didn't mention it to anyone. He hears a slight weariness in your voice over the phone, and his own energy shifts in response. This type of attention doesn't come from a superficial interest or a checklist of things to notice. It comes from a connection that is born deep within him. Jung believed that our true emotions are projected outward so that we can finally understand them ourselves. This makes this type of man react from his interior, from his soul, not from a premeditated strategy. He doesn't need to see you every single day to remember you. In fact, you might notice that in moments you least expect it, he'll mention something you told him weeks ago. He'll ask about a small problem you were having that you thought he forgot, or he'll simply appear, seemingly out of nowhere, for no logical reason. He doesn't do it out of habit or convenience. He does it because his unconscious mind is leading him back to you, again and again. He's processing something that he himself hasn't yet defined, but it has a gravitational pull he can't fight. This isn't obsession, and it isn't dependency. It's emotional resonance. Your energy has touched something deep inside of him, and that something is beginning to speak without the need for words. Another powerful sign is how he begins to change when he's with you. There are men who put on a persona, who act the same with everyone, who maintain a consistent and controlled image. But when a man is truly falling in love, even if he doesn't consciously know it, his attitude with you is fundamentally different. He might become more vulnerable, more open, or paradoxically, even more clumsy and awkward. True love doesn't make someone appear perfect, it disarms them. It strips away the masks and makes them more human, more real. If you notice that he allows himself to lower his guard only with you, if he shares a thought he would normally keep to himself, if you notice that the silences between you are not uncomfortable but are instead filled with a deep, unspoken presence, you are facing something that goes far beyond a passing interest. There's more. Jung maintained that what the soul loves, it instinctively protects. And this man may begin to worry about you in ways that have no logical explanation. He might want to make sure you got home okay, that you aren't cold, that you don't walk alone at night, or that you remember to eat. This isn't about control or trying to make himself seem important. It's about a primal instinct that has been activated inside him, something that has started to feel deeply responsible for your well-being, as if his own internal balance now somehow depends on yours. And when that happens, when a man begins to care for you with that silent, unspoken devotion, without asking for anything in return, without expecting applause or recognition, it's because deep within his being, he has already made you a part of his inner world. There are moments when a man doesn't need to say a single word for his energy to give him away completely. It's as if his very presence in a room begins to speak for him. Maybe he hasn't said he loves you. Maybe he hasn't made any grand promises or tried to map out a future with you. But there's something undeniable in the way he observes you, a certain quality of stillness that comes over him. You can feel it in how the rhythm of his own breathing seems to change when you get close, and how he can just stay silent by your side without any need to fill the space with chatter. And that silence is not an absence of words, it's the presence of everything else. It is his soul connecting directly with yours, without the interference of logic or social scripts. Because when a man is more in love with you than he dares to admit, his body says it all. Pay close attention to how he reacts when someone else talks about you. If you're in a group and a friend praises you, watch his gaze. Does it soften? Is there a flicker of pride in his eyes, as if your victory is his own? Even more telling is his reaction to criticism. If someone says something even mildly negative about you, notice how his expression tightens, how his posture changes. Love doesn't need to be conscious of itself to rise up and defend what it values. His instinct activates automatically, even if his mind is still lagging behind, confused. Jung affirmed that the unconscious has its own paths and its own wisdom, and many times, we are guided by powerful emotions that we haven't yet managed to name. If a man physically flinches or his focus sharpens just at the mention of your name, it's because something deep inside him has already decided that you matter far more than he consciously thought. Another unmistakable sign is found in his effort. When someone feels something real for you, they make an effort, even in the smallest of things. It doesn't have to be anything spectacular or flashy. It can be found in the way he truly listens to you, not just waiting for his turn to talk, but absorbing your words. It's in how he remembers things you said in passing weeks ago, the name of your childhood pet, a frustration you had with a project at work, a dream you once had. It's in how he adapts his time, shifting his own schedule not out of obligation, but because the prospect of seeing you is a priority. It's even in how he apologizes when he feels he wasn't at his best with you. That quiet, consistent effort reveals more than 1,000 romantic declarations ever could. Because someone who feels nothing for you doesn't move. They remain comfortable in their own orbit. But someone who loves, even if they don't yet understand the depth of it, makes space. They move things around in their life. Not to impress you, not as a transaction, but because his inner world is already, unconsciously, rearranging itself to include you at its center. And here comes something that very few people ever notice. When a man is deeply touched by your presence, he begins to change even when you're not there. His entire routine can be altered. His thoughts might become more erratic. To his friends or colleagues, he may seem more distracted, unusually reflective, or even a bit restless. It's as if something profound has been activated within him, and he doesn't fully grasp why, but you are the reason. You are there, present in his mind, in his emotions, coloring what was once automatic and is now filled with a new significance. Jung spoke of the incredible power that internal figures have to transform an individual, even without any physical contact. And you, perhaps without even seeking it, have become a powerful figure that now inhabits his interior world. Even if he doesn't say it, even if he actively denies it, you are already there, influencing his state of being from the inside out. This is precisely why you shouldn't be carried away by the surface-level confusion or the lack of clear verbal signals. Many men keep quiet about what they truly feel, not because of a lack of emotion, but because they find it incredibly difficult to translate the complex, non-verbal language of the soul into the simple, logical language of words. And that's where you, if you're truly attentive, can see beyond the veil. You can perceive what he himself hasn't yet fully discovered, that his heart has already made a decision, long before his mind was ever consulted. There is a deep transformation that occurs in the heart of a man in love that is rarely noticed at first glance. It's slow, almost invisible, but it is profoundly powerful. This transformation begins to manifest when he starts setting aside certain attitudes that were previously a core part of his daily life. Perhaps before you, he was a man who skillfully avoided commitments. Perhaps he always maintained a comfortable emotional distance from people, a protective wall around his heart. Or maybe he simply lived in a kind of self-contained, comfortable individualism. But ever since you've been around, something has been shaking him from within. Suddenly, just thinking about himself is no longer enough. He begins to open up a mental and emotional space that he was never willing to yield before. And he doesn't do it as a sacrifice or a conscious choice. He does it almost without realizing it, as if his soul were naturally adapting to a new reality that is calling to him from the depths of his being. Notice if he has started to share parts of his life with you that he didn't show to anyone before. I'm not talking about benign details or simple facts. I'm talking about the intimate fragments of his history, his fears, his past mistakes, his most hidden dreams and insecurities. When a man is connecting with you at that deep, unconscious level, he begins to show you his full humanity without filters. Not because he wants you to see him as perfect, but because for the first time, he begins to trust in a way that he may have never experienced before. At that moment, it's no longer a conquest. It's no longer a game of seduction. It's surrender. And that surrender, although it may seem small and quiet, is the greatest proof that something fundamental inside of him has changed. Jung often claimed that the soul needs a mirror to truly know itself, and you, with your presence, have become that mirror for him. As he begins to truly see you, he simultaneously begins to see himself in a completely new light. There's another detail in this transformation that often goes unnoticed, and it's how he reacts to your emotions. Not everyone knows how to handle the emotional intensity of another person. But when a man is truly, unconsciously involved with you, he begins to synchronize emotionally without even knowing it. He feels your joy, and a genuine smile spreads across his face with you. But more profoundly, he becomes restless and unsettled when he perceives your sadness. Even if he doesn't have the right words, even if he feels awkward and doesn't know what to do, his energy changes when yours does. He may not ask, "Are you okay?" every single time, but you'll notice it in the way he looks at you, and how his voice softens, and how he might just physically move a little closer, wanting to do something but not knowing what. That silent, innate desire to accompany you in your emotional state, even without knowing how, is one of the most honest and pure gestures of unconscious love. And perhaps the most revealing sign of all is what happens when you're not there. Observe how he acts when you're not around. If he mentions you in spontaneous conversations with his friends, if he saves things specifically to tell you later, if something important happens to him, and you are the first person who comes to his mind, in those moments when there is no physical presence to motivate him, you are still present. If you continue to exist in his inner world, in his thoughts, in his emotions, then there is simply no doubt. He is more in love than he believes. Because what persists in absence is infinitely stronger than what is simply said in presence. And that isn't a coincidence. That is the soul speaking its truth. All of this is not about guessing what someone feels. It's about learning to read the world with your heart. Because so often, love doesn't arrive with a neatly written script or a list of certainties. It arrives with subtle signals that the soul launches when it begins to recognize another soul as its counterpart. There is a stage in this process where a man, even without knowing it, begins to need your presence not as a habit, but as a form of balance. He doesn't express it with romantic phrases or planned declarations, but there's something in his energy that feels off-kilter every time you're far away. He may not tell you directly, "I miss you," but you'll notice it in his subtle impatience when there's no news from you. You'll see it in the way he just so happens to appear precisely when you are about to forget him, and how any excuse seems valid as long as it brings him close to you again, even if just for an instant. This is an obsession, and it's not emotional dependence. It is a genuine, soul-level connection. The kind that is born from a point so deep within him that even he can't explain why he thinks about you so much. And according to Jung, this makes all the sense in the world, because the unconscious is not limited by logic or by time. When a true emotion takes root there, it begins to take shape in his thoughts, his impulses, and his decisions. One of the strongest ways this manifests is in how he begins to consider your opinion, even in things that don't directly involve you. Maybe he starts telling you about his life plans and then pauses, asking what you think, not to look good, but because he genuinely cares about knowing if that future could align with you. He doesn't do it with the intention of impressing you, but because silently you are becoming a guiding figure in his emotional life. He may even begin to talk to you about his deepest doubts, his moments of insecurity. And this isn't because he wants to see you as a therapist or because he doesn't know how to handle his own emotions. It's because his soul has detected in you a safe presence, someone with whom he can show himself as he is, without armor and without strategies. When a man reaches that point of emotional openness with you, there are no barriers left. Because real love isn't built on certainties, it's built on the terrifying, beautiful possibility of being vulnerable without fear. That trust he places in you, even without being fully conscious of it, is one of the purest expressions of deep love. But what confirms it all is how he begins to imagine his life by your side. Even without you proposing it, you'll notice it when he mentions the future and, without realizing it, you are already included. He might say something like, "Someday I'd like to travel to that place." And within that vision in his mind, you are already present. He doesn't say it directly, but he implies it. And those small phrases, those images that are born spontaneously from his mind, are open doors to his unconscious. In his heart, you already form part of the path, not as a temporary guest, but as a stable, essential part of his ideal world. When a man begins to look at you as if you were part of something he doesn't ever want to lose, something begins to change in his way of relating to the world. And that change is not superficial. It's about how his soul begins to reorganize his priorities around your existence. Because when a feeling is true, the other person stops being an addition and becomes an essential part of the whole. You'll see it in how he begins to give you priority, even when he doesn't say it. Maybe he's having a complicated day. Maybe there are 1,000 things demanding his attention. But even so, he makes himself present for you. Not because he has an obligation, but because he simply doesn't want to stop being there. Because being with you, even in silence, gives him a sense of peace. And peace is one of the most underestimated emotions in love, but also one of the most important. True love, the kind that gestates in the unconscious, the kind Jung recognized as a transformative force, also manifests in that deep calm that is felt when you are with someone who doesn't need you to be different to be loved. When he feels at peace with you, when he realizes he can lower his guard, that he can be imperfect and still be accepted, then he begins to see you as a home, not a physical place, but an emotional refuge. And when that happens, he begins to align with you. He becomes genuinely interested in your passions, your ideas, what makes you vibrate. It's not that he loses his individuality. It's that he discovers the beauty in sharing a world that, before, was only his. When we reach this point, where all the signs intertwine, when you look back and realize that this man has changed without noticing it, that his actions, his silences, his most everyday gestures speak more clearly than any word, that's where you understand the most important thing. True love doesn't always present itself in a scandalous way. It doesn't always arrive with fireworks or perfect declarations. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a constant presence, of silent care, of a tenderness that doesn't need witnesses. And when a man is more in love with you than he imagines, his soul has already made a decision that his mind is just beginning to understand. Jung taught us that the unconscious doesn't lie, that in the deepest part of us lies a truth that manifests itself through symbols, emotions, and acts that we don't always understand, but that are profoundly real. And if you are seeing these signs, if you have felt this connection, if something deep inside you tells you that what happens between you is not casual, then listen to it. Trust your intuition. Because many times, what we call doubt is simply the mind trying to understand what the soul already knows. The signs are written not in grand proclamations, but in the subtle alchemy of changed priorities, in the gravity that pulls him back to your orbit even when logic offers no explanation. The heart arrives at its destination long before the mind realizes it has traveled. And if you've witnessed these silent testimonies in his actions, rest assured, his soul has already whispered what his lips have yet to confess. He is much more in love with you than he imagines.
Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next content. Goodbye.